think it's time we rise up, people. It's time's up, people. You can talk all you want, but it won't change a thing. I wanna know what you do.
Previously on the Up and Up with Jodi Newell.
We won 8 races in the State House out of like the 18 that we ran, and I think 5 against incumbents. I could be wrong, and we just shocked the world. So I didn't feel comfortable saying we last time because I wasn't part of this movement, but
own it.
So now we're running. We hope to run 50 people across the state, challenging people who need to get challenged, who are too comfortable with the leadership.
How many seats are there total? If you're running 50, how many seats are there?
Well, there's 38 in the Senate and 75 in the House. We have more people running in the Senate than the House. We really made a lot of ground in the Senate. We have 5 people who were part of the co-op last time who won, and I think we have like 15 candidates this time so far, and we're looking for more candidates as well. And I think a lot of people are in that process. Probably about 6 or 7 pretty strong progressives who I think would be able to move on a different leadership if they felt like there was enough power. Part of the problem is that the Senate majority leader and the Speaker of the House yield incredible power. They basically determine every single piece of legislation that gets through. And if you do not vote the way they want you to vote, there are consequences. They take away committee assignments. They punish people. So there's a lot of people who toe the line because if they don't, then they lose access to power. You know, I want to break that. I want to break the chains there. You know what I mean? I think, Cynthia showed a blueprint of someone who was bold, who was unapologetic. She fought hard for what she believed. She did not apologize. She did not vote the way leadership wanted, and she showed a ferocity, and several others did too. And I think the reason she was able to do that is because we did have a group of people who came together into the Senate. And I look forward to being part of a government that walks the walk. We're hoping to kind of overtake a majority to make sure that the Senate and the House have leadership that's responsive to people, who don't rule with an iron fist, who don't usurp all authority and within the entire State House, and who democratize the process and who allow the legislation that the people of Rhode Island deserve to go through. So we have a platform: Green New Deal, Medicare for all, $19 minimum wage, affordable housing for all, 10,000 green affordable homes for working low and affordable housing, low income and affordable housing, eviction moratorium, utility shutoff moratorium, dental, vision, hearing, affordable drugs. Really making sure that the average person gets a say. And the reason why is because we all are average people. I'm a teacher. One of my close friends, Clara Hardy, is running against one of the most conservative Democrats in the House. She's a social worker. We have nurses. We have students. We run the gamut of all the professions that are out there making a difference in the real world. So instead of the law school pipeline that's been happening in the State House for years and years and years, where if you don't go to law school, if you don't meet the right people, if you're not connected to the right people, you don't get a chance to run. We're ensuring that working class and middle class people who are in the communities fighting every day to make sure those communities are, fighting for those communities every day, have a say in what happens in our government, because we haven't had any. Obviously, we're not taking any money from corporate PACs or from fossil fuel industry or anything like that. So we're really going to be responsive to the people.
See, I think it's really interesting because I grew up in Massachusetts. I'm just outside of Boston, and so I think of course Rhode Island, Massachusetts. I mean, we went down to the AS 220 every Sunday night to go see improv.
I'm sure I
that
saw
was my
you
big
there.
thing. I was 18, 19 years old. Anyway, whatever. But very close. So 45 minutes away if you drive like me at 18. But anyway, not anymore. Anyway. But very close. And then also kind of, this is part of this, New England area and things like that. And I think, maybe in other parts of the country, and I don't know this for sure, but I think that a lot of times, we talk about certain, certain states and the way things work in their legislature as kind of like, I want to say like mafia, like, you know what I mean? Or like this kind of whatever. And we talk about New York and okay, we understand that. Or we talk about Chicago and kind of what happened with that, not necessarily the mafia, but kind of the same kind of, mentality with, the gatekeepers and, you kind of have to come up through this pipeline and that, that kind of thing or whatever. I hear that a lot resonating with you in Rhode Island. And I know a little bit about Providence politics enough to know that.
Yeah, it's all true. It's all true.
But it's very interesting because I think what really catches me about this and what I really want to highlight is the idea that yes, there are those kind of entrenched situations, right? We try to address that with trying to combat corruption and things like that. But really at the end of the day, if you still have some semblance of democracy where people can vote, you can go and you can talk to individual people, individual voters, and you can talk to them about the issues and you can get them out to vote. Now, so here's my question. I guess, to kind of form this word bubble, like whatever it is into a question. I'm wondering how you see that in Rhode Island and kind of, because I know that in these New England states and in these state houses, there are very kind of entrenched, I want to say, I'm just going to go with it, mafia-like, systems where, I've already said that, but how do you feel like grassroots outreach to individual people can stand up against these kind of entrenched systems that we have and these kind of pipelines that we have in state legislatures? How do you see that? In your experience?
If you talk, my answer now is going to be different than it was a few years ago, because I think we saw the start of that happening. We saw proof of it. Cynthia's race is proof of that. Tiara's race is proof of that. I think 8 new legislators in the state house is proof of that. That we were able to, these are long-term entrenched, powerful people that no one thought had a chance of losing their races, right? And we just worked hard. Cynthia worked hard. I worked hard for Cynthia. We had Sunrise activists who work hard, and we just knocked doors and we talked to people and we treated them with respect. My favorite door knocking experience, I'll share that with you. So I was knocking, someone had a Billy Connolly sign, but they also had a Black Lives Matter sign, and I think and I was like, I'm just going to knock on this door and talk. And it's like, well, we're not sure. We like Billy, but what happened is like, we wanted gay marriage to pass. And then we, talked to him and, he said he would look into it and he ended up voting for it. So, we wanted to, thank him for that. I'm like, well, let me ask you, do you want someone who you have to go and knock on doors and take your time and beg them to do the right thing? Or do you want someone who's going to be out there at the state house fighting with you to do the right thing? Because that's what we're talking about. That's a difference, right? We're tired of, and they're like, they shake their head. I guarantee you they voted for Cynthia. Guarantee you. And I think that's the difference. I don't think we envision a state house full of us, right? I mean, and we've been told it's impossible. But I think 2 years ago showed that it is possible. And this year we're going to show that it's not just possible, but it's inevitable. I really do feel like there's going to be an earthquake, and I'm excited for it. I'm here for it because, too many of the issues in our country we're just not addressing in any way. I mean, our response to the climate crisis is disgraceful. We know it's coming and we're doing absolutely nothing about it. In the last World Health Organizations, the United States is 37th in health outcomes, right behind Costa Rica. And guess what all 36 countries ahead of us have? Universal health care. And you know what all except 3 of those countries have in common? We pay twice as much per person as all but 3 countries.
Yeah.
So you know, we have the least efficient healthcare system in the world, and we're just and we're not doing anything about it. We know we have a sickness of gun violence. We know how to solve it. Australia had one mass murder 26 years ago, and they addressed it. And we are frozen. And why are we frozen? Because gun manufacturers and fossil fuel industry and pharmaceutical companies and health insurance, you know, make sure that we do that, and they make sure that we don't have the hope to imagine something different.
Now, let me ask you a question, because, and I guess I'm kind of backing up to earlier in the conversation, and, you know, but, you know, in when I was looking into information about this action and the housing and homelessness and things like that, there were a couple of statistics that maybe you can clarify for me, because I look at these things and I think, wow, this doesn't make sense to me, right? So let me just throw a couple at you, right? So there's $1.3 billion.
I think 1.13 billion.
Okay, 1.13 billion. All right, then my math is going to be off, because what I thought it was originally was 1.5 billion. So let me just, I thought you said 1.3 billion, but
that's okay.
So for 1.5 billion. And what I had read in these articles going back 7 months, and so they kind of changed along the way, but these were quotes from different people. And what they were talking about, I think the most recent one that I had read was talking about 600 people who were out on the streets seeking homes but did not have a home, right? So these were 600 people. And so when we're talking about $1.5 billion, and we do the math on that, and we say, all right, well, if we divided that by 600 people, I think what I came up with was $250,000 each for each person. And so I'm wondering if you can clarify for me, because let me just preface it with this. And I know we're getting towards the end, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. I want to be respectful of your time, especially because I know it's so in demand at this moment. But I work in a homeless shelter, and I love what I do. I love being able to help in the unique way that I'm able to help, you know, which probably is one you picture, but you know, these are the ways that I can contribute, and I love it. It's a family affair. My grandmother founded it. I love the homeless shelter, but at the same time, I feel a little bit like that person who, when we say we want Medicare for all, the person who's like, but I work in billing. What's going to happen to my job? You know what I mean? And you're just like, sorry, like I feel like that person, because yes, I work in a homeless, my bills get paid because I work at a homeless shelter. But if homeless shelters if people were housed, I would be very happy to lose my job and go on to do something else. But here's the thing, the idea, to bring it back to square, is that it's a Band-Aid. I understand that my job is a Band-Aid, and I'm not necessarily fixing the problem. I'm essentially taking capitalism's best kind of, you know, smooth over, and that's what I'm doing, which is essential because this is the situation that we live in, and so we have to get by with what we have. We have to work within the structure that we have, right? But when you talk about having I'm sorry, because I thought it was 1.5 billion.
It's okay. So it's an obscene amount of money for us to be sitting on, is what
and then we're not like sitting on it, but also at the end, you know, just putting people into hotel rooms where it's like, okay, well, that's great for the hotel owner, or like whoever's coordinating that or something like that. But at the end of the day, that's still a Band-Aid, and those people are going to be, so I don't mean to be discouraging. Like, that's not my point. We are in this structure, and this is how we must operate because we are working within the system. But to me, I guess I just wonder what you think about the idea of throwing all this money into, you know, of course, like I said, this is the system that we are in, and so we have to function in that way, and we do the best with what we have, right? But at the end of the day, it really it feels like a waste of money to be putting people in a hotel instead of putting them actually housing people, because housing being a human right.
Well, housing people for the winter is not the goal. Housing people for the winter is the urgent thing that needs to happen right now, because we have a housing shortage, right? The goal is to create sustainable, dignified housing, green And that's why part of the platform of the co-op is to build 10,000 green, low-income, and affordable houses. So, and that's part of what we're pushing. That's part of what it was a bill in the legislature last time. It's going to be a bill in the legislature this time. We're not hopeful with the passing, but we shall see. And then our goal is to get enough legislators in there. So next time, if it doesn't pass this time, that becomes a reality. But no one thinks that housing people for the winter is a solution. It's absolutely not. It's an urgent need because otherwise, people are going to freeze to death this winter. So it needs to happen, and we don't have the housing the way we need to because we haven't invested in it as much as we should have, to be perfectly honest. And we've not used any of that ARPA funds to build that. And it's pretty disgraceful. Like, we should have been building these houses last spring, but we've had a housing crisis for a long time, and we've done nothing about it. And the reason I think we've done nothing about it is because, unfortunately, too many people in the state house don't view the unhoused population as a constituency.
Right.
And that is, and I don't want to come to that conclusion, but actions speak louder than words. And that is the action. That is what the actions are telling me is the reason why that the unhoused community has been so frustrated and so not listened to, and had created the need for this kind of urgent action. But no one sleeping out at Sleep Out RI thinks that the end of the story is hotel beds for the winter. That is 100% not our goal. Our goal is to get safe, dignified, green, low and affordable housing, 10,000 units for people that need it. And that's what it's going to take. And that's what we should be doing. And and again, when we have people in the state house who are responsive to the needs of the average person and not the needs of the lobbyists, not the needs of their corporate donors, not the needs of those who have power, then I think you're going to see a government that works.
Yeah.
Which we don't have.
Can I just ask you really quick before we end? I know we need to wrap up and things, but there was one thing that we were talking about, and you were kind of telling me a story before we started this interview. And I mean, it hit right here. And I think it very much coincides with what you're saying, listening to the needs of the people and the people who are actually struggling and things like that. And if you don't mind, just in a couple of minutes, if you could kind of share that story, I'd really appreciate it, of Mendez when she was having this, when they were having the hearing, and kind of how that went.
Yeah, so she sponsored a bill to do a study for Medicare for all, right? And hundreds of activists, me included, but I would say over 100 people called to advocate for that. So this has been the 6th year in a row that the bill had been submitted, and it had been tabled, or actually it had been gone for study, which basically means that they're not going to pass it this year, right? There's no study, there's no person sitting in the library reviewing all these bills, right? They call it going to study because it sounds nicer, but it's basically killing the legislation.
Yeah.
And after one woman came up with a really powerful story, that woman's running for office too, and she rocks. I think she's running, well, the redistricting process is, anyway, I don't know you, but here's what I know is, like, I feel guilty sponsoring a piece of legislation that I know in my heart's right, but I'm asking, hundreds of people to pour their hearts out of the injustice of the healthcare system for them, while, people, in power are just listening and determining, they get to determine whether or not real people are going to be able to, or get the healthcare justice that they deserve. And she, and it was just really powerful. When she did that, I was watching the hearing, and me and Justin were texting each other, just like it with tears in our eyes, just so inspired by, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously it's not word for word, but basically, yeah, she's like saying it's the height of injustice to ask people to pour their hearts out, to speak about the way their pain that they hold because of an unjust system, and have, people in power kind of lord that system over them, and like not even bother to like vote on the legislation. That kind of inspiration, that's going to make Cynthia a phenomenal lieutenant governor, on her way to other amazing things, and kind of the North Star for me to follow when I follow in her footsteps. And I would, one of my, the fact that she has endorsed me, as she has, is one of the great honors of my life, because I do feel like, I know I'm gushing, you're not supposed to, it's not about it's not about the people, right? It's about the power, right? But like, I think you need people who use their power for, fight for people, and see that happen before we can envision a government that can do that. So yeah, I think it's important. So it's important to uplift people who are doing the right thing in positions of power.
I think it's not idolizing their person or idolizing that individual who it is, but idolizing their heart and what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like the values that they're. I think
it's one thing to talk the talk, but to walk the walk is something else. And
wonderful. And I always enjoy. I don't know how much you liked him or not, but I always enjoy watching Senator Whitehouse's whiteboard.
Oh yeah. No, I enjoy that. I mean, I think honestly, like he spends. I mean, I get it's the dark money is important, right? But I want all the money gone, right? Like get it out.
Right,
we don't need any of it. We don't need any of it.
Right.
We need public. It's dark money's still money, right? You can still spend limited amount, but again, it's better than nothing. I endorse that legislation. But if I had a magic wand, I would get rid of all corporate PACs, get rid of them all. So.
Well, I'm with you. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you. And I hope that we can follow up with you throughout your campaign. I would love to do that. And I'd love to have Justin on as well. And I just think it's amazing what y'all are doing. And thank you so much. Thank you so much from somebody who has been not very far from living on the street myself with my children and things like that. I just think, I know what it's like to feel like nobody cares. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right. Cool. All right. And thank you everyone for watching. Do you have any last words, actually? Let me throw that out there. Any plugs?
Yeah,
I'm gonna find out about you. Where can people donate money?
It's easy to get discouraged. It's easy to see this as hopeless, but there is hope. And I hope Rhode Island's motto is hope. And I think that we have a chance of doing something that the rest of the country can replicate. So I am hopeful, and I hope that you guys all pay attention, because there's something exciting happening in the littlest state in this union. So.
Wonderful.